Yeah, so nobody chooses to be an atheist. Should I be an atheist, dude? I'm not an atheist. Should I be one?
Well, if you're not one, then I presume you have a belief in a God.
Yeah,
So
Christian
you
God of the
didn't. So you
Bible.
didn't. So you didn't choose to be a theist.
Yeah, cool. I can just say I was elected before the foundations of the universe and say it was some sort of God proposition discourse, right? Just
Yeah,
say it
you
was
could.
some providence or sovereignty.
You could say that. Yeah, absolutely. And what I would say is, I grant that that's your belief. And if you find that proposition convincing, then you have no choice but to believe it. In my case, I didn't choose to be an atheist because I'm not convinced a God exists, right? I've looked at the evidence that I've been presented from a few
What's a
different
metric of evidence?
from a few different religious traditions and just found it unconvincing. It doesn't even matter what the metric is. All you need to know is I
Yeah,
found it
but that's just a
unconvincing.
mental state. That's not really rational
That
justification. Do you
that's
have a criteria that you're going
yeah.
to invoke, or
So I'm not talking about whether my belief is true or not. I'm talking about, I think you're missing the point a little bit here. I'm not making an argument for the truth of atheism. Do you understand
oh,
that?
so you just okay, cool. So the
Okay.
the point of the live is to just give out like autobiographical information about your preferential
No,
intersubjective.
no. It sounds like you're missing the point quite horrendously badly here. So calm down, take a deep breath, and listen for a moment, and then I'll explain. The point of this particular live is to discuss an issue, which is something I talk about quite a lot in my lives, which is the involuntary nature of belief. Now, I don't know if you've spent much time studying this, but have you heard the term doxastic involuntarism?
No, no, go ahead.
Okay, so doxastic involuntarism is the idea that beliefs aren't actions that you choose to take, they're things that happen to you in an involuntary way. And it only takes a little bit of thought about this to realize that this is true, because when you're convinced of something, the belief follows automatically, right? You can't stop it. If you're convinced by something, belief happens to you. And if you're not convinced by something, belief isn't a possibility for you. It's not an option because you're not convinced. Belief cannot happen.
Yeah,
So
I could just index that to my worldview and say it's sovereignty of God. That doesn't
you,
remove the God
you,
proposition.
you could. That's delightful. But it's still the case that if you're not convinced of something, whether it's indexed to God or
Yeah,
sovereignty
that's
of God
just
or,
that's
or
just a
whatever it
mental
is,
state. That's not rational
so
justification.
so
You're just telling me about
again,
yourself.
again, you're getting very confused. I'm talking about beliefs. Beliefs are mental states. That's what a belief
Yeah, yeah,
is.
yeah. You're
That's what
just
we're
telling me
talking
about
about.
auto. You're giving
So
me your autobiographical
I'm
information.
giving
Why
you
do I
your
care
I'm
about
giving you
that?
yours too.
No, I
So
could no. You haven't
so
removed the God
so
proposition from the table.
so
I could
I
just say
don't
that's
I
part of
don't have
providence.
I don't have to remove the God proposition from the table in order to recognize that your beliefs about your God
Yeah, because you're recognizing
stem
it from.
from, hang on a minute, stem from you having been convinced by them. That's just an undeniable fact of
Wait a minute. What's your argument for
of
that? Hold
human
on. That's an
psychology.
assertion. What's your argument for
Yeah,
that?
it's how human psychology works, and it's how the neuroscience of belief works as well. So you can't
Wait
believe.
a minute. You think neuroscience is the complete answer to subjective experience? I need another
That
argument for that.
I don't think that's the case I made. I don't remember saying that.
Okay, so
What
how
I
could it be
said
the
was,
case? So how could it be the case then? How could it be the case then that your neurons firing in a certain way just dictate everything that you believe? Because again, you're just telling me about a
right,
subjective experience. I'm asking
yeah,
you for rational justification
yeah,
for all this
yeah,
autobiographical intersubjective
okay,
preference that you dish out in these echo chambers, bro. I could
lovely.
just take that same proposition
You
and I could
could,
appeal and I could
you
apply.
could. Okay, now you're going to listen and not speak. So, when you become convinced that something's true,
What do you
definitionally
mean convinced? You're
you
not
believe
arguing
it.
for that. Why should I believe
When
convinced?
something persuades you that something is true, belief follows inevitably. If you don't find yourself persuaded that something's true,
You keep saying persuaded. What's your
belief
argument for that?
is impossible. I don't know exactly what it is you're asking for. Are you struggling to understand what the word persuaded
Yeah,
means?
demonstrate what you mean by
I
persuaded and why that's more parsimonious to your worldview than mine.
are
I
you
can just say it's the
are
providence
you
of God. You're just going to
you
say it's
could
psychology.
yeah,
So demonstrate why yours
okay.
is more parsimonious
Are,
than mine.
are you struggling to understand what the word persuaded
Are you
means?
struggling to give me any substantiation for any of these assertions that you've made, bro?
I think you are. I think we need to go back to first principles with you, which is a shame. So
Oh my gosh, dude.
when you find something convincing,
Have you not heard anything I've said?
yeah, I've heard what you've said,
I
but
could just say this
you're
entire
currently
proposition could be by virtue of a God proposition,
it could be,
right?
and I'm saying you are entitled to believe that. You can believe that if
But you
that
keep saying
convinces
persuasion
you,
and convince.
if that
Why should I
convinces
take
you.
that view to be true? Why should I
I'm
believe
not
that?
talking about whether it's true. Here's where you're galactically missing the point.
Galactically,
I'm not
indeed.
talking about whether these claims are true or not. I'm talking about whether an individual person finds them persuasive. Now, if you really don't know what it means to be persuaded by something, then I don't think there's very much I can do to help you here. If you honestly are saying you don't know what it means
Why do you think
to find something convincing, then it's not going to be a fruitful argument. But
why
if
do
you're
you
prepared
think
to put your big boy pants on,
it is a matter of persuasion?
if you're prepared to put your big boy pants on and come with me on this journey and just grant for a moment,
why do you think it's about persuasion? Give me an argument for that. Prove that.
Because being persuaded of something is what
you're just restating the claim, bro.
Is what causes belief. Now, I don't understand
what it is
that
you just keep saying the same thing over.
Well, it's not something that needs to be demonstrated. It's obviously true.
What do you mean it doesn't need to be demonstrated? Why should I believe
obviously true.
You keep saying believe.
Because to believe means to think that something is true.
Okay, now you're just going to define the word.
Yes, I am, because that's how we use words when we're speaking.
Can you provide or demonstrate why I should
just calm down. To believe something means to be in a condition of being persuaded that it's true or likely true. That's literally what the word means.
That has nothing to do with
what it means. Everything to do with what we're talking about here. I think you're all broadcast. I think it's all broadcast and no receive. I think you've come on here to try to gain some sort of victory without actually being interested in having a discussion. So I'm trying to patiently explain to you what we mean here. So I'm going to explain it once again. When we use the word belief, what we mean is belief is the condition of being persuaded that something is true or likely true. Now, if you want to disagree with that definition, would you like to provide another one instead?
No, I'm going to adopt that definition, which is totally why I'm not talking about it. That's why I'm not even addressing that, because it's not my argument.
So having adopted that definition, if we grant that belief is the condition of being persuaded that something's true,
that's not what I'm granting. That's not what I'm granting. I'm granting you the definition. That's all I'm granting you.
So
I'm asking you, why should it be the case that a belief system is about being persuaded? From your own worldview, right? You say, I believe and I convince. Look, those are just mental states.
Yes.
I could just
belief
say
is a mental
that
state.
This is an act. I could just act right. Good.
This entire conversation is about mental states. This entire conversation is about mental states.
Demonstrate that right there.
Because belief is a mental state.
Okay, give me an argument for that.
Well, what else do you think it is? A shoe size?
I could just say I was regenerated by the holy God of the triune God. I could just say that. Now, what's your argument that that's not the case?
Because believing is defined as being to do with what you think is true.
I could just say that I was regenerated by some supernatural force.
And again, you're switching away from the subject to belief.
No, I'm not, dude. I'm just calling you out.
And to the subject of what you think is true. Right? I'm not talking about the actual claims.
Wait a minute. You have a truth value system? How do you attain that?
Go on, cats. My cats are fighting with each other.
Are you a single man who owns a cat? That's a red flag.
I'm actually not a single man who owns a cat, but why would you?
Dude,
why would it be a? Oh, look at this guy! He's an animal. He's an animal hater. Line up, ladies.
No, I keep a cat.
He hates animals.
I keep a cat in the barn, bro.
He keeps a cat in a barn. Line up, ladies.
Keep a cat in a barn, bro.
I'm sure. Yeah. Okay. So look.
Yeah, it kills the rats and the snakes.
The source of your confusion.
Hey, is that my belief system that I keep it there?
The source of your confusion is that you keep on getting confused between a discussion about belief itself and a discussion about.
Okay, listen. I don't think you're hearing anything that I'm saying.
No, actually, you could really do with learning some manners and letting someone get to the end of a sentence.
Yeah, this is a non sequitur. You haven't heard anything I've said.
No, because you're not making sense. So as I'm saying again,
no, you just can't track intellectually, bro.
The problem you're having is that you're
just struggling. My argument. Why don't you just steel man my arguments?
You're struggling to tell the difference between a discussion about belief and a discussion about what someone believes. Because when I started explaining that a belief is a state of mind, you said prove it.
Yeah, I don't care about. Yeah, okay, good.
Having previously agreed with
my belief is a state of mind. Now I want to know how that belief comes into accreditation to the person, right? So how does one believe simply by persuasion and then adopt the worldview? When my position is that this could just be the providence of a holy triune God that is extra natural of all.
It could be the case.
You're going to say,
it could be the case that everything you believe appeared there by magic. That could be the case. And if that's your position,
magic,
and if your position, good for you. Why do you think I would
believe in magic?
My position, as an adult, is that I'm familiar with the psychology literature on belief. I'm familiar
Oh,
with
okay.
the
So you're just so
neuroscience
intellectually
literature on
inclined, and so you know
belief,
neuroscience. Cool, 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 cool,
right?
cool.
And everything that we know about belief and about the
Why do you
way,
keep
for
muting me?
example, because you won't stop talking, it's extremely
Why do
rude.
you keep muting me, bro?
Because you don't know how to have a conversation like an adult. Do you know I have
Yeah. So let's
conversations with
talk
people
about
in
the term
here?
magic. Is that like
I
a
have
manipulation
conversations
of?
in here with people that I never have to mute because they understand that a normal conversation
No,
involves
that's just
talking
because
and
you have an
listening.
echo chamber sometimes. And now that I'm calling you out on
Yeah,
your nonsense, I'm calling
yeah,
you out on your
yeah.
cat ownership nonsense. You don't like
Sure.
it. So listen, man. I'm
Yeah.
just gonna ask you one more time, bro.
No, you're not going
What
to ask
is
anything. You're going to listen. So I'm saying that everything we understand about the way that
bro?
beliefs form in human minds is to do with the operation of brains and minds, right? We understand what it means to be convinced by something, and we understand intuitively that when you become
Okay.
convinced by something, a belief forms. And if you're not convinced by something, a belief doesn't form. Now, if you're struggling to understand that, and your preferred position is that beliefs form in your mind by a God putting them there, well, okay, all I have in response to that is it's such a flagrant denial of everything we know about our own human experience that if that's your position, I'm not sure if we can really have a fruitful discussion.
Yeah, so I'm just going to say this again. You saying that it's a flagrant denial is just an assertion, but I'm asking you for any type of instantiation of why I should believe that that's just
Yeah.
an assertion. And all I've heard you say
Well,
is that it's magic without an argument. So
yeah,
you're just making like obtuse claims, bro.
sure.
Here's my position.
I'm not
I
your
have
bro,
a
by the way. I'm not
supernatural.
I have two brothers, and you're not
Oh,
one of
you're
them.
not
You
my.
don't need to
You're
call me
not my
bro.
bro, by the way. You're
Nope.
not my bro, by the way. Yeah, I probably wouldn't bro
Do you
sip
know
with any dude that own cats.
do you know how much this is getting clipped on YouTube tomorrow? Your crash
Oh,
out is
dude,
just fantastic.
you're already clipped, bro. You
Yeah,
think you're the only
right.
one with a YouTube channel, dude?
Yeah, that's wonderful. Well,
Hey,
I
so
look
listen,
I
bro.
look
Check this
forward
out.
to your
Lock in
silly
with the
voice on
content.
yours.
Lock in with the
So
content, dude.
yeah,
Lock in with the content.
okay.
All
So
right, so check it out.
as
Okay,
we've already said, beliefs are a condition of being persuaded that
you're
something's
just
true. You agreed to that, and you then decided to argue against it by saying, "How do you know it's true?" Well, if you are struggling to know it's true, why did you agree to it?
no, that's another non sequitur. Look, this is all I'm saying, right? I can say that this belief is either A, inherent to like some sort of social norm or something to that effect, which would be your position.
It's not my
But I could
position at
also
all. It's not my position at all.
okay, by
I,
being persuaded by some form of psychology or something like that, right?
no,
By
that's not
the
what I
way the
said at all.
neuroscience went.
That's not what I said at
Okay.
all.
So belief is okay, is belief
How can we have been
purely
having
indexed to a
how can we have been having this argument for 13 minutes and you're so clueless about what
because
I'm
you believe
actually
it is of
saying?
a natural occurrence from some sort of material substance, right?
And I
You
didn't
believe that
mention
there's
that.
this.
No, it could be
Oh,
magic.
oh,
It could
okay,
be
cool. So it could
magic.
be supernatural then.
Could be.
Okay, so the God
Even if it's
proposition is still on the
supernatural,
table.
even if it's supernatural, I mean, I personally don't think it is because I think grown-ups don't believe in magic. But even if
Okay,
it's
wait a minute. Why do you
supernatural,
keep
it
saying
would
that?
still be the case that you can only believe something if
Yeah,
you're
give me the
persuaded of
definition
it.
of magic. Just
It
give me the
might
definition of magic.
it might be the case that you're crashing out really hard. It's wonderful.
Give me the definition of magic.
I love this. It might be the case that it's the magic that makes you get convinced. But it would, even
Yeah,
if that
you
were
keep
true,
saying magic. Why should I adopt that language
it,
system, bro?
it would still be the case that without being convinced, you don't have a belief.
Okay, where does convince come from?
It comes from being persuaded by something
Okay, how are you persuaded by something?
through either just thinking about it or through input to your senses.
Okay, input to your senses by via what?
Input to your senses from the world around you, from people you talk to,
Okay, so there you go. From a naturalist option, right? So
from
from a
thoughts you
material option,
have,
from
from
thoughts you
it
have.
doesn't matter what
Okay, cool.
the source
Now,
of these
how
things
is
are.
this possible? How is this possible within a material worldview? How is that possible? Go ahead.
Well,
Give
we
me an
have
argument.
we
Give me an
have a
argument.
material world around us. We
You
appear
think that's
to
an
have
argument?
one.
Just saying that there's a material world around
Why
us?
do you ask a question, then immediately start talking as I give the answer? Do you think that's good
Because you
manners?
just gallop around the answer. So how is it possible to be
Right.
persuaded of something with a naturalist worldview? Go ahead.
Well, I don't necessarily have a naturalist worldview. I'm not committing to one
You
in order
just
to make
said it
this
was by
argument.
material consequence that you believe everything.
I previously said it could be by magic too, didn't I? So
Okay, why do
I'm
you
not
say magic?
committing.
What's the definition of magic?
I'm not committing.
Go to Oxford. Give me the definition of magic.
I don't have to give you a definition of magic. So
Wait a minute. You don't have to
I,
justify a claim? That's
I,
weird.
I think that at the moment you're struggling to track what this
I
conversation is
think at
about.
the moment you're struggling to even give an argument for your position. That's what I think at the moment.
Anything else?
Yeah. So in other words, you can be persuaded by something. It is either A, by a material consequence, or B, by extranatural material consequence. Now you're saying that your position is it's a material consequence. Cool. Substantiate that. Render an argument.
I actually didn't use the word.
Maybe your cat should do better than this, man. You're struggling, bro.
I actually didn't use the word material. I just said that you can become persuaded.
Okay,
do you remember when I said it could even just be by thinking about something? Sometimes people get persuaded by things just by contemplating them. So there's a tradition of contemplative.
Yeah, how is thinking
contemplatives
possible?
where you can just sit in a cave and think about something and end up becoming convinced of something. That's how belief works. Belief works when you're persuaded by something.
How's that possible?
So it could be extrinsic or intrinsic. This is going to be such a good video. It could be extrinsic or intrinsic, right? Whatever it is, whatever the source of your persuasion is, my case is simply saying that if you're not persuaded, you don't believe. Now, the interesting thing is, where these arguments and discussions normally go, which gets quite interesting, having agreed the basics, the discussion normally gets onto whether you can choose to find something persuasive or not. In this case, we haven't even got off the starting block because you won't agree the basics.
How's this possible?
You're just trying to come in here and run some kind of silly precept saying, how is it possible to have a thought? Whereas all you're demonstrating at the moment is that it's impossible for you to have one. And on that basis,
wait a minute, I think been my position?
You can go. Because I just think, not an honest interlocutor, not actually here for an honest debate, not actually here to talk about the interesting subject. So the interesting subject is, once we grant that persuasion leads to belief, and he's the first person I've met who's tried to argue against that. It's idiotic to argue against that, especially when you first agreed that the definition of belief is the condition of being persuaded. When you then try to argue against it, you're just punching yourself in the face over and over again, which is what he was doing there. But the value in these conversations is having agreed those ground rules and that definition to then get to the question of, can you choose what you find persuasive? That's where the value in the conversation is. And he was so head up his own arse that we didn't even get to that part of the conversation because he was all over it. And anyone who would criticize a man for having a cat, that says absolutely everything about him that you would need to know. So line up, ladies. There's your alpha male right there. What can I say? I'm ashamed of myself for loving my cat. You know, she sits with me for most of my live streams. She stays on my lap. The other one comes and goes. She's got a sister. This one, she's so loyal. Every time I sit down here in front of the mic, she just comes and sits with me. It's the sweetest thing. My wife and I have discussions about whether she loves me or her more. I think it might be me, but I'm not sure. Anyway, there we are.